An apple brown Betty was one of the favorite desserts of the incomparable Nina Simone. Welcome back to my Black History Month series, and today we're making an apple brown Betty to honor Nina Simone. Nina Simone was born Eunice Kathleen Wayman on February 21st, 1933, and she was a North Carolina girl just like me. It is said that food and music were closely tied to her earliest memories. She was born in the middle of the Great Depression, so her mother often made rice pudding, lots of beans, and brown Betties in order to stretch the family's budget. To make a brown Betty, you're going to need 4 cups of stale white bread. And baby, after I cut up my 4 cups, I put this bread right back in the bag. You can use any stale bread you have. I just happen to have this white bread. I honestly want to try this recipe with some biscuits. And for the trolls, yes, I'm using a cutting board. The next thing you want to do is peel and cube about 4 apples. I use Honeycrisp apples in this recipe, but any apple that you have will work. Because baby Nina Simone, like I said, was born in the Great Depression, so her mama used what she had. And of course, like any good cook, you have to taste as you go. If you're not familiar with Nina Simone, she was a powerhouse. She was a singer, a songwriter, a pianist, a composer, an arranger, and also a civil rights activist. And her music style included classical, folk, gospel, blues, jazz, R&B, and pop. She started playing the piano at the age of 3 or 4 years old. And the first song she ever learned was God Be With You Till We Meet Again. Now, baby, if you grew up in a church like me, you know that's the song that they play before you depart church service. At the age of 12 years old, Nina Simone was standing on business when it came to civil rights. I read that during her first classical recital, her parents had taken front row seats in the music hall to see their daughter perform. Before the concert could start, they were moved to the back of the hall to make room for white people. Baby, when I tell you Nina Simone stood on business at the age of 12 and refused to play until her mama and daddy was moved to the front to see her play, it is said that that incident contributed to her later involvement in the civil rights movement. Simone's music teacher saw how talented she was at an early age. And to help her follow her dreams, she set up a local fund to assist her with her continued education. So with the help of scholarship money, she was able to attend Allen High School for Girls in Asheville, North Carolina. Through my research, I learned there are so many different ways to make an apple brown Betty. Because Simone's mother made this for her as a child growing up in the Great Depression, I'm following the most simple and easy recipe for this dessert. You want to start by melting about 2 tablespoons of butter into a skillet. If your bread is really stale, you could probably skip this step, but my bread was fresh, so I wanted to make sure I toasted up my bread. So all I did was add about 4 cups of my freshly cubed bread to my skillet and just gave it a toss in that butter. You want to toss it long enough that your bread becomes brown on both sides. I had my heat set to medium high. You don't want to cook this too high because you don't want to burn your bread. You want to make sure you're constantly turning it because you don't want it to get too brown. You could also toast your bread in the oven if you want. I just chose to toast mine in my skillet. You don't want to toast these so long that they are like croutons. You don't want them to be that crunchy. You want them to just be toasted a little bit to have a little bit of color and to absorb that butter in the skillet. Once you have your bread toasted up, all you want to do is remove it from the skillet and add it into a bowl. Once you add it into your bowl, you now want to add in some brown sugar. I had to end up making my own brown sugar for this recipe. I had ran out. If you ever need brown sugar, all you need to do is add 1 cup of white sugar to a bowl and then add in some molasses. I am a country girl, so I always keep molasses on hand in my kitchen. After adding in a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, you then want to add in 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. You want to give that a really good mix until your bread is coated with your spices and your brown sugar. The cool thing about this recipe is you have pretty much everything in your house to make this recipe. I know I did, except brown sugar, but I normally have that in my pantry, but at least I had the ingredients to make it. Once your toasted bread is fully coated, you want to set it aside and you want to add your 4 cups of apples to another bowl and then add in the rest of your brown sugar. Now all you want to do is make sure that your brown sugar and your apples are mixed very well. You want to make sure that brown sugar is coated on the apples. Once you have your apples and brown sugar mixture combined really well, the next thing you want to do is add your apple mixture to your coated bread mixture. Let's talk about how Nina Simone got the name Nina. As I mentioned earlier, her birth name was Eunice Kathleen Wayman. But in 1954, she adopted the stage name Nina Simone. Nina started gaining popularity at a Midtown Bar and Grill in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and the owner of the bar at the time insisted that she sing as well as play the piano. So she decided to adopt the stage name Nina Simone. Nina derived from Nia, which was a nickname given to her by her boyfriend at the time, Chico. And Simone was taken from the French actress Simone Signore. Nina has seen Simone Signore play in a 1952 movie called Casse d'Ore. Adopting the name Nina Simone also gave her a cover and allowed her to remain undetected, knowing that her mother would not approve of her playing the devil's music. Baby, Nina Simone's mama sounded like my mama, because that's something my mama would say. In February of 1959, Nina Simone debuted her album Little Girl Blue. Baby, because she sold her rights outright for $3,000, she lost more than $1 million in royalties when her version of the jazz standard My Baby Cares For Me was re-released in the 1980s. Baby, imagine making the music and not benefiting at all from the album sales. I would be sick. Let's finish this recipe before I tell you the rest of her story. Once you have your apples and your bread mixed together, you just want to add 1 stick of melted butter. You want to give your apples and your bread a good toss to make sure the butter is well coated with the bread and the apples. Once everything is well coated, you want to put this in an 8x8 casserole dish and bake it for about 40 minutes. You want to bake this dessert until your apples are fork tender and your bread is a little bit crusty on top. You want to bake it uncovered on 350 degrees. Let's fast forward to the civil rights activist era of Nina Simone's life. As I mentioned earlier, Nina Simone stood on business when it came to treating people equally. She did not stand for it as a young child back at that music hall where they wanted to treat her parents differently than the white folks. So she definitely didn't stand for it once she got older. In 1964, Nina Simone changed record companies. And on her debut album for Philips Records, she addressed racial inequality in a song called Mississippi, Goddam. This song was her response to the murder of Medgar Evers in June of 1963 and the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. That bombing took the life of 4 young black girls and partially blinded a 5th. When asked about the song and its meaning, Nina Simone simply said that song was like throwing 10 bullets back at them. And Mississippi Goddam was one of the many protest songs that she wrote during her time. She made her voice heard, but it did not go well in the southern states. Doing my research, I found that promotional copies of the record was smashed by a Carolina radio station and returned to Philips Records. But baby, that did not stop Nina for advocating for what she believed in. She continued to perform and speak at civil rights meetings such as the Selma to Montgomery marches. She was very close to Malcolm X and supported black nationalism. And baby believed in a violent revolution as opposed to Martin Luther King's nonviolent approach. Nina Simone's consciousness on racial and social discourse was prompted by her friendship with playwright Lorraine Hansberry. Yes, the amazing Lorraine Hansberry who wrote A Raisin in the Sun. It is said that Lorraine and Nina never talked about clothes or men. Baby, they were all about the revolution. Talking about the revolution and how to promote change was their real girls' talk. One of Nina Simone's most famous activism anthems, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. She wrote this song with Wyndon Ivern in the years following Lorraine Hansberry's passing. Famous singers like Donny Hathaway and Aretha Franklin also did renditions of Young, Gifted, and Black. When reflecting on her contribution during the civil rights movement, Nina Simone said this: "I felt more alive then than I feel now because I was needed. And I could sing something to help my people." And that she did. We lost Nina Simone on April 21st, 2003 at the age of 70. To have been the 6th of the 8th child born into a poor family in North Carolina, Nina Simone spent her later years and died in France. Baby, during her last performance in Newark, New Jersey in 1998, she announced to the crowd, "If you're going to come see me again, you got to come to France because I'm not coming back." And she didn't. She suffered from breast cancer for several years before she died in her sleep at her home in France. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to make one of her favorite childhood desserts, this apple brown Betty. This dessert was so delicious and buttery, it made me want to do a little dance in my kitchen and had me saying this: Come on, Nina. Although she didn't make this dessert, she definitely loved it, and I can see why. Honestly, there's nothing like your own mother's cooking, and I know Nina Simone's mother poured so much love into this dessert. It requires very few ingredients, and it's very easy and simple to make. My family and I thoroughly enjoyed this apple brown Betty. I will put the full recipe in the description. Y'all saw me dancing, so you know this dessert was spilling the sweet tea. Approved. Nina Simone was a gem, a beautiful soul who helped change the world with her voice and her talent.